all these questions. I cannot believe how many of your friends are involved in the chat room getting to us from left field.
Yeah, here we go. Let's talk about Cowpoke McGee. And he says the recent news for Oregon State, Washington State is that they will stay in the PAC alone and enjoy the war chest and possibly steal Mountain West Conference teams. Do you find it short-sighted to do this rather than just working with the Mountain West?
Cowpoke, that's a pretty good question. Let me give you a brief background. The NCAA distributes its money to each conference based on what happens in bowl games and what happens in March Madness. They pay you what's called a unit of money from NCAA revenue. And it's paid over a 5-year continuum window. So if you have your football program goes to the college football playoffs, there's a chunk of NCAA unit money that you will get, and every other team in the conference gets a little piece of that pie. If you go to March Madness and a whole pile of teams go, those basketball units go to each conference member. The big debate right now, and this is going to be lawyers that will have to sort this out. All these guys defecting from the Pac-12, and it's now down to 2. What happens to the remaining money of units that USC and UCLA and everybody else who had earned in the playoffs, the bowl games, and the March Madness? That money is paid out over a 5-year period. Where does that money go? Does that money go into the conference coffers, even though there's only 2 conference teams left? Who has access to that money? Just Washington State and Oregon State, because everybody else is gone? Do the teams that defected, do they get their units, even though they're in another conference? This is really complicated. I think, Cowpoke, that's why Washington State, Oregon State have made the public stance. Pac-12 banner, we're going to carry it, even if there's only 2 of us left. They need to wait and see. And I was told it's $55 million that's available in unit money in the Pac-12 bank account. Somebody has to decide, does everybody get to split that? Or is that money left behind because of the Trojans and the Bruins and Cal and Stanford and everybody else that defected to the Big 12? We don't have an answer for that. So the Pac-12 might be really rich if they get to keep the money in Oregon State, Washington State. One of the theories out there was that if they won all that money, if they get all the units, they would take some of that money and they'd go to San Diego State and Boise and Fresno and say, we'll pay half of your exit fee to leave the Mountain West. Come join us. It's an idea. I don't know if it's legal because nobody knows yet what happens with the, quote, $55 million in unit money that we think is still out there. That answer your question?
Yeah, that's an interesting angle because you can make a claim, of course, that money is earned. USC and UCLA, they earn that money by their performances in the tournament. But it all comes down to the contract and lawyers getting involved, like you said. So we'll find out.
Yeah. Anybody got a phone number for lawyer's office in La Jolla? Because they're going to get some phone calls.
Okay, better call Saul. Okay, here's one from Dorada. It says, Padres, quit beating a dead horse.
Well, I don't listen to what anybody in the clubhouse has to say anymore. I'm just tired of it. We got 4, maybe 5 weeks left in the baseball season. I don't know if there's a rally in them. How can you be a great team when you never had more than a 3-game winning streak? And by the way, you're not playing the dead-in-the-water Giants or beating down Arizona or the Washington Nationals anymore. You got the Phillies. Phillies roll into Petco Park, 179 home runs this season.
Jeez.
Everybody hits home runs in Philadelphia. Of course, they play in a bandbox. Their team batting average is 259. And that includes Kyle Schwarber's 190 batting average with 39 home runs.
I was just thinking of it.
So you got the Padres with a pitching staff that's kind of been shredded, and you got all these big bats, Philadelphia, and then you got Houston, and then you got the Dodgers. So I'm not beating a dead horse. I just don't think I can't cheer for them because I think they've let the community down terribly, and there will be people that have to answer questions at the end of the season if this turns out to be a non-playoff season. I think it will. So are you tired of talking about it? Do you agree with them? Quit beating a dead horse?
No, I mean, this is a soap opera. It's turned into, I mean, it's beyond what's going on the field. It's everything else, fire AJ, I mean, everything. So we have to keep covering this. And like I said, there's still a chance that maybe they can pull a rabbit out of their hat and get in the playoffs. Highly unlikely. I mean, geez. But yeah, they still need to be covered. I mean, with all those superstars, the Fab Four, the Fraud Four, I mean, gosh, can't not talk about them.
I think the big baseball storyline now is the Dodgers and no Julio Urias and what happens to Dodger postseason hopes vis-a-vis the Atlanta Braves after the Braves came in here and punched him in the mouth on the weekend. Let's move on.
Okay. Well, still talking about the Dodgers. This is from Joey. He says, pack your bags, Julio. You're done.
Well, that's easy to say. And the Dodgers, they're the ones that took the stance on Trevor Bauer. And then the commissioner's office interceded. And, he wound up with a 394-game suspension. Now, part of it was reduced. He lost a chunk of money along the way. The Dodgers made a stand. The issue with Julio, his record, and I was stunned when I went back and dug this up today. His record is 60-25, 3.14
Really?
career ERA.
That's really good.
See, for a smart guy like you were a dummy too. I was absolutely amazed. I don't know that you throw that guy out right now, but the Dodgers do have history. They ejected Trevor Bauer. You go way back in the day, they tolerated a lot of crap with Steve Howe and drug abuse and cocaine.
Oh, yeah.
And then they finally gave up.
Mm-hmm.
So the Dodgers do have history of taking a stance, but I don't think they'll do a knee-jerk reaction with this kid until we know more. But like I say, if he strangled his wife, if he punched her in the face, that's different than him dropping four-letter words. So we don't know the severity of, but it is a felony. And that to me is significant. And baseball has a history of landing with both feet on guys that are multiple offenders with domestic abuse, guns, alcohol, etc. But I wouldn't give up on him because he's 60-25. What I would do, and it's going to be really unpopular, and Scott Boras, he'll be calling me to bitch about this, and the union will be jumping up and down. If I'm the Dodgers, I do an intervention.
Oh, yeah.
I force the issue about his lifestyle and why has this happened again? Why did he go against the grain after 52 weeks of counseling? And does he have an alcohol problem that's triggering this? They have a right to know. They have a right to ask. And screw what Scott Boras thinks or what the union might say in terms of protecting the players' rights. Got to protect the women's rights. Got to protect the baseball club.
Well, I was raised a Giants fan. I'm now a Padre fan, but I've always respected the Dodgers. So I'm expecting them as an organization to step up here, do the right thing. He needs to be suspended and let the legal process carry out because it's a felony charge. You spend a night in jail. If even if he's suspended from the team, he's still going to get paid, so that contract's still going to work for him, but they need to let the legal due process go through because if you roll him out there like, hey, well, we need him. It's like the playoff race. I mean, that just doesn't reflect well on your organization.
What about doing an intervention? I mean, you've been in management. You tell me, is it right of the leader of the franchise to say, I need an intervention to find out why this young man acts this way?
Well, I do think that as an organization, they need to address it to the best of their ability. Now, granted, an intervention, I always think about, people showing up at someone's house and they're surrounded by 20 of their friends and trying to get them to quit drinking booze. But maybe it comes to that. But, I don't know what happens, in the clubhouse, in the front office, but you would think that from the last incident that they would have brought Julio Urias and he would have sat in front of some boss, some manager and had to explain himself. So if this happens a second time, it's, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. I think I got that one backwards like George Bush did. But anyways, the Dodgers do need to address it, but I think their scope of addressing it only goes so far because the legal process will take it the next mile.
And then the baseball process will take over once the legal process.
That too, yes.
Okay, we carry on with the conversation. You got something to say on our Monday bonus podcast on Fans Forum. Write it in quick in the chat box. Go ahead, John.
Okay, this is another comment here about the Dodgers. No intervention. Just keep them on the non-active end of year bye-bye. And Cody Bellinger finally healthy. And if doctors force him, that sucks. But it takes 3 years to recover from.
Well, Scott Boras indicated the Dodgers, he didn't use the word force, but he kind of insinuated he wasn't ready to play, and he was on the field and he was hitting 195 and 210 and all that. But at the end of the day, they were not going to pick up the option on an $18 million a year contract with a guy who had lost his ability to play. And now all of a sudden he's resurrected himself. Healthy? Maybe. But, the agent plays a role as to where this player is physically. And if the agent has the perception, my guy is not ready to play, then they have to solve that difference of medical opinion between the organization and the player. And by the way, I give Andrew Friedman credit. He stood up and he talked back to Scott Boras. The Boras Health Institute, your people worked with him in the offseason. You're not taking any blame at all for him, quote, maybe not being ready to play.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Boras backpedaled on that, which is the first time I've ever seen Scott Boras backpedal on anything. It's history. He's not coming back here. I seriously doubt that as a free agent, but he resurrected his career at Wrigley Field and he'll get a payday. If I'm him, I think I stay in Chicago because he and Wrigley Field seem to link up pretty well.
Oh yeah, that works out really well for those guys. But you got to give Bellinger credit for turning it around. I mean, because he has been terrific this year. But I just remember seeing him and he was just so inept, just flailing, could barely even make contact there for a while when he was in his recovery. So I don't know. I mean, what are you going to do here? It kind of reminds you a little of that Shohei Ohtani thing where he had his own medical staff that was giving him bad advice. And now Boras has his medical staff.
Well, I don't know if it was bad advice for Shohei. It's just the reality that he just physically broke down and he had already had elbow surgery. So, the fact that the Angels acceded to the request to let his medical people handle him as a multi-position player 7 days a week, that's kind of unique. But he's had great success, and now it's all kind of caught up to him. But those injuries to pitchers, they happen on every major league roster.
Big time. Okay, moving on. This is from Rob. He says, question, will UCLA fans outdraw San Diego State fans at Snapdragon this Saturday?
Rob, I'll tell you the stunning thing to me, and UCLA fans, there's a big Bruin contingent here. Maybe not as big as the USC Trojan Club, but they seem to have revolted against the ticket prices that San Diego State is charging. San Diego State's ticket prices are different depending on who you're playing. They played Idaho State. Ticket prices were here. They played Ohio U. They were here. UCLA ticket prices are this big because you're paying a whole pile of service charges and everything. I don't know that that's the right way to conduct business, but that's the way they're conducting their business, and that's why San Diego State has had 16,000 empty seats each of the first two home games. And I asked somebody in Los Angeles, you expect UCLA fans to LA to come down? He said, no, the ticket prices are absurd. And that's why there's 8,000 unsold tickets as of this past weekend for UCLA week. So I like a lot of people at San Diego State, but I think this whole marketing package of Snapdragon and how they've conducted their, quote, business of business, I think it's really screwed the thing up.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's still 8,000 tickets available for this. I'll bet you at least half of those are sold to UCLA fans, either locally or making the trip down from LA. But you know what? That experience at Snapdragon was so great when I went Saturday night and had a really great time. But I said earlier that the Aztecs are going to solve this attendance problem by just win, baby. And they won again, but boy, was it an uninspiring win against Idaho State. It's not quite enough to turn around the community.
Somebody needs to answer this question. You can write me. My email address is on my website. You can write me. How come student body doesn't care? How come in a community of 150,000 alumni, you don't fill that football stadium? For it's a good product. This is not New Mexico Lobo football, UNLV football that hasn't won bleep in decades. This is Aztec football. It's won a lot under Hoke, Rocky Long, and Hoke again. Why am I having to yell at Aztec student body and Aztec alums? Just write me an email why the hell you don't support the team. Go on, John. Next question before we really burn this thing up.
Okay. Well, here's just a quick comment from Robin. The best sports show ever. Thanks, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton.
You are right. We are bleeping brilliant. Next question.
Next question is, Okay, this one's from John. He says, after all the wins by Pac-12 schools this weekend, is anyone asking what could be if they could figure out a way to stay together?
Yeah, they can't stay together because it's been a money grab. But as I said last week when we did our college football preview, Pac-12 conference, year of the quarterback. And that goes from Bo Nixon, Oregon, to the Heisman Trophy winner at USC, to the kid at Utah who carried that team, Cam Rising. I mean, it's a fascinating year of really good quarterbacks in the Pac-12 conference. And then, by the way, you got Neon Dion, no dim light right there with what they're running at Colorado, and they're still a member of the Pac-12 conference. So I think the farewell season might be record-setting.
Yeah, this is going to be great. I'm looking forward to this year, but it is weird that everything's dissolving in front of us. And we got UCLA, San Diego State. Who's SC playing next weekend? Stanford. Okay, that'll be interesting. And then Colorado gets Nebraska. So here we go, man. The season's heating up.
On we go. We got a lot of college football to cover in the next 10 weeks, but what a start out of the gate.
This is from Brian. He says, some people never learn. Preach, Lee.
What is he referencing?
I think it could be almost any story in the headlines.
So I should preach or should I shut up? I'm not quite sure. You need to enunciate this more. Or should I preach to John, or is John going to lecture me? Go ahead.
Okay, here's one comment from Vic, and he says, Belly gets the swing in 2023. He looks just like his swing in 2017. It really does take 3 years for a full recovery. Belly bombs.
Well, we don't know. I mean, it's torn labrum. And, what part of the shoulder was it, labrum? Does it impact his swing? Did his conference suffer? They tried to change his stroke, where he held the bat, his stride, etc. And at the times that I sat there and I watched him closely, every time I saw him, it was a different approach to swinging. He looked so out of sync. And the end result is 195 and 210 with a loss of power. Now, I don't know whether they changed him at Wrigley Field. I think he looks different to me right now wearing a Cubs uniform in terms of the bat location and the movement and the stride. So maybe they figured something out, or maybe it does take 2.5 years to recover from labrum surgery. There's no answer, but the only answer is 319 batting average with, I think it was 24 home runs out of the weekend.
How often does this happen? I mean, first of all, you see people that win Rookie of the Year or MVP, and then eventually they fall off a cliff and they're out of that Major League Baseball. But he reinvented himself, came back. I mean, how often does someone start big, go down to the dumps, and come back big?
Well, his dumper was because of the injury, I maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Question is, how badly was he hurt? Did the scope surgery solve it? How come it took him so long to get back? I don't have answers to that. I'm sure we'll find out, because Scott Boras sends out a book for all of his clients in free agency, and he matches Cody Bellinger's accomplishments over one given year and prior, when he was healthy, to every great player in Major League Baseball.
Well, do you give him a long-term contract? Do you trust this?
Good question. I would assume so. I would assume a 3-year deal, because I don't think I'd give him 7 years, and I don't want him falling off the face of the earth for me if he's going to Cincinnati or whatever. But the price will not be easy, because that is Scott Boras.
Yeah, it's Scott Boras. Hey, moving on. We got some social media comments here. We can sneak people in. And let's go here talking about Coach Prime. And this is from that poll you ran on Twitter. And this is from SD79. He says, the NIL made this a business. Students don't matter anymore. They go where they are wanted.
It's player free agency. They go where they are paid. And Colorado's got, quote, big cigar boosters in Boulder. And I'm sure their NIL money is pretty significant. I am fascinated, though, by just the numbers of skilled people they got. I mean, they got so much speed. And then you got Sean Lewis, as I talked about, the Kent State head coach who became the coordinator, and what they run at the line of scrimmage and how quick that ball gets out. Now, they didn't run the ball very much or very well, but they spread the ball everywhere. They sprayed it to running backs. They went down the field, and obviously Travis Hunter made some remarkable catches. I'm a little stunned that TCU struggled so badly, but you know what? Texas Christian threw 2 interceptions in the end zone. Hell, TCU could have had 60 points.
They missed a field goal, too.
Yeah, exactly. As you and I yelled at the TV, they left 17 points on the field.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could have been a TCU win, but they just couldn't handle the kind of speed and the skill guys. And Colorado just kept running these guys on the field. It was absolutely amazing. But that being said, everybody gets video, and I'll guarantee you by week 2, week 3, there'll be some different things defensively that will be done. We'll try to slow that whole package down. But out of the gate, as you said, what a hell of a story. And I think it's
awesome.
I think it's phenomenal what Neon Dion has done. I don't agree with how he treated his players coming in the front door, but this roster, it's really cool.
Well, think about this. He brought with him, 9 or 10 guys from Jackson State, and one of them was Hunter. And I guess Hunter is almost like part of the Sanders family, so they have this personal relationship off the field as well. Now think about how many players around the nation are paying attention to this.
Oh yeah.
And they're saying, I want to play for, Coach Prime, because that dude he's all about winning. He's all about respecting his team and believing in themselves. I love this story, and I just hope it keeps going all season long.
And historically, where do you recruit the bulk number of, quote, skill players, wide receivers, running backs, DBs? Florida,
right?
Texas.
Yep.
And where's Prime's background? Sunshine State.
Yep.
Longhorn State.
Yeah.
It opens a lot of doors. So we'll see where it goes going forward. Okay, move on.
Moving on. Here, this is another Padre comment. This is from Padre Fans 619. He says, AJ screwed the pooch at the deadline. He should have traded Snell and Hader and got something in return. Now those two will walk free, and the Padres won't get anything since they are free agents. AJ and the fake 4 need to have a press conference and apologize to the fans. The front office and players sure did fool us at the Fan Fest and the hype, and now players are quitting.
I guess he won't be sending a Christmas card to the Padres, huh? The problem I have is they can't trade the contracts that AJ gave out. That's a problem. Second problem, they're over the luxury tax. Third problem, who represents Soto and Hader? Scott Boras. So you got all kinds of issues here going forward. I don't think they're going to blow it up because they can't blow it up. The longer this goes, I tend to doubt that AJ's job's in jeopardy. That being said, if he is the man in the executive's chair next year, they better be bleeping playing in October and maybe be in the World Series, because then I think the patience of the fans is going to wear down, and will the patience of the owner wear down? So I think Preller's got 1 year to find the right mix of support people to the Fab Four. And I don't know how much more Peter Seidler can write checks because of where they are already over the second tier of the luxury tax, which takes away international signing bonus money and depletes where you draft in the amateur draft. So they got some decisions to make because the support crew wasn't real good. And the Fab Four, statistically, and add Cronenworth to that conversation, all had substandard statistical seasons compared to what their career numbers were.
But the cash register is still ringing.
Will it ring next year, though?
But there's a waiting list for the season ticket list. So
that doesn't mean you answer the phone if they call you this off season after what you saw this season.
Yeah,
no,
so definitely some are going to abandon. I'm with you, but I still think there's going to be enthusiasm around this because it's the only team in San Diego, right? Well, you've made a big point about that before. But I know that Preller has got a plan. You could probably figure he's got a big whiteboard in his office looking at 2024, 25, 26 starting lineups. If I'm in his position, I think you keep Snell. I mean, he's just been terrific this year, and maybe he's figured it out, and he seems to really like it here in San Diego. He's always on TV.
But who represents him?
Boras. So that's that guy again. So, but I think AJ and Seidler already have a relationship with Boras because how many other Boras clients are on the roster?
John, you could argue with me, but I'm a talk show host. Doesn't matter how loud you yell. I'm a talk show host with opinions. How about a couple more here before we put a lid on our Monday bonus podcast?
Okay, this is about the year of the quarterback. This is from Dan F3, and he says, love the content on your page, but you are really missed out on mentioning Cam Rising at Utah.
I just did.
Yeah, well, you just did. Yeah, back-to-back Pac-12 championships and Rose Bowl appearances. Dude is a winner and toughest quarterback in college football.
You know, and he's proven it. One of the other interesting guys who had a really good first weekend, although he's going against San Jose State, was Oregon State starting quarterback, DJ Uliega. He was involved with 5 touchdowns, threw the ball, ran the ball. He was a part-time starter for 2+ years at Clemson, and they kind of fell off the map in the ACC. But he wanted to go to Oregon State to play for Jonathan Smith. And first game out of the box, again, it was against San Jose State. He put up 45 points. So we'll just see what Oregon State's quarterback looks like. Washington State's got an NAIA transfer quarterback from that football power incarnate word of Texas, Cam Ward, and he threw for a ton in Washington State's opening night win. Like I say, this is really the year of the quarterback. And I did mention Jaden Delores, second-year starter at Arizona. Arizona State's got a raw freshman from the University of Florida that's their starter. I don't know how he'll hold up when it's real people against real people. So I just think this will be a farewell swan song in the Pac-12 conference, but I think it's the year of the quarterback in the league.
Yeah, and then Michael Penix, at Washington, and what
450
they did
and 5.
Yeah, and they smoked Boise. I mean, were you surprised by that game?
I just didn't think Boise had the manpower to hold up to 4 quarters of football against the Huskies, and the Dogs really did them in. And Michael Penix is Michael Penix. I mean, he is just perfectly gifted for what Kalen DeBoer is running up there offensively in Seattle. Like I said, virtually everybody in the conference has got a thrower, Bo Nix, Oregon included.
Yeah.
And now suddenly you got the Colorado Buffaloes and all the speed and firepower, and they've thrown their helmet into the ring against everybody. So I think it's really going to be a good season. Hey, listen, we hope you've enjoyed our Monday bonus podcast.